Welcome to If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo. Don, how you doing?
I'm well.
This is
You caught me looking at our list again,
our list.
and I still am like, surprises me. I would have to visually see this to be reminded of a few of these names, but now that I do, some stuff's coming back to me.
We are on part 2 of the quarterbacks of the Bills from Kelly to Allen. Just a quick reminder that Don was in the organization for 27 years. I was there for 4. We overlapped with every one of the quarterbacks that we're going to talk about today in the building in various roles. So we're going to share some memories, some anecdotes, some thoughts, and observations.
Think you did a good job. You know, as I said, we had the previous series about the head coaches.
Yeah, Mark to McDermott and Foley into Bean.
In the hierarchy of descending importance,
yeah,
I think this is a clear number 3, isn't it?
I'd argue it might be number 1. I mean,
it's
above GM and above coach. I'd rather, if you gave me a choice, if I was starting a franchise, would I rather have a great GM, a great head coach, or a franchise quarterback?
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I think I'd rather have Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts than Andy Reid.
Mm-hmm.
Or
I think
I take the franchise quarterback number 1. I think I would take owner above any of them.
Owners. Oh, okay, that's the Mount Rushmore right there, right? That 4.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
But I think I would take franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
Not director of football administration. that's number 5. That's number 5. So let's get into.
I think we talked to the Bills long snapper.
Reed
Ferguson.
Yep.
was a great interview, but
yep.
He's way above me.
Yeah, the long snapper is more important than the director of football,
especially after we heard how hard it was.
Right,
that was a good one
for sure. 2002. The Rob Johnson experiment is over. Alex Van Pelt cleaned up during that season as well. 3-13, fresh start. New right tackle who you may or may not have sabotaged his career a few years later. That's a story in the archives. So we trade for Drew Bledsoe.
Yeah, and there was no, moving on from Van Pelt and Rob. There was no one in the building that was still kind of hanging on to that, like, oh, was that the right decision? It felt right.
How shocked were you? When did you find out that they were trying to trade for Drew, and how shocked were you that the Patriots were willing to trade him to the Bills?
When Tom Donahoe came in, something different that he did. In some ways, he was organizationally friendly. In other ways, he wasn't. But one of the ways he was that he opened up the draft room to full-time staff to be in the war room. Okay. It was a big room. You know that
players' meeting room.
Yeah. The big one. Mm-hmm. So they were all up in a table like this, bigger. Owner had this top scouts and there were phones there. Then in the front couple rows were all of the non-assistant coaches, believe it or not. They were never really much part of it. The coordinators were, but the scouts were all in the room. And then behind that, we were able to be in the room. I was always going to end up being there after the 7th round anyway to help sign rookie free agents. But I usually would go down at the end of the 6th or early in the 7th. But for these in 2002 and some of the following ones, I was in the room for like all of it.
Okay.
And there was a buzz that morning that the team was, Jim told me, Overdorf, that we're going to try to trade for Drew Bledsoe. And
what was your reaction?
I was thrilled. It made so much sense. I just couldn't believe, yes, the Patriots had won the Super Bowl with Brady, but I mean, Bledsoe was still pretty much in his prime. He hurt us badly in the late 1990s, as you remember.
Bledsoe to Coates.
Oh,
Ben Coates.
Yep.
Over and over and over and over. Yeah.
Right. And mobility was never part of his strengths anyway. And we're like, wow, this guy can still sling it.
Was anybody in the organization surprised that the Patriots would trade?
We all were.
Yeah.
But that was just the arrogance of Belichick, but we'll take it. If he's like, not only am I going to allow Bledsoe to leave, I'm going to allow him to go to a divisional opponent. Like, wow, okay.
I think people might be interested, including myself. How does a trade like that start? Does Tom Donahoe call Scott Pioli or whoever the GM of and say, "Hey, what's it going to take for this guy?" Like, how does it work? How does it start?
It's reaching out with a phone call to the GM and just saying, as we see it, it might appear that, you know, so you're going with Brady.
Okay.
And
how many days before like that trade do you think that first initial phone call took place?
I would imagine it took place a few days before. I learned about it the morning of.
Okay, but this is a multi-day process for most of these big trades.
Yeah, it's at least a few days in advance.
So then, Tom Donahoe would call him up, say, "Hey, you know, what would it take?" Then they would go back and have a meeting, like maybe the GM, Bill Belichick, you know, all their guys, and then they would call back with a, "Hey, this is what we're looking for," and then you guys have a meeting, and then counter, etc. It's just like,
this is what it's going to cost. It's going to cost a first-round pick in that case.
Okay.
And because knowing how draft day is so structured and you're on the clock, and if you had your 15 minutes, if you went 15 minutes in 1 second, you lose the pick. You go to the next pick. You can't rely on being able to do all the negotiations while you're on the clock. So yeah, they had to set the table a few days earlier. I was not part of those conversations, but I got to be part of it that morning at least.
Okay, so he's traded here. He comes in. He plays fantastic in 2002. Like they had a great offense
at a Pro Bowl level. Before that, when he first came in, there was an all Buff personnel email that went out to the entire staff saying they went to pick up Drew Bledsoe. A group of people, I think Scott Burchtold may have been on that, but a small plane brought him into town on a beautiful April day.
Was it rare to have a player come in on a private plane?
Yeah, it was rare. It was,
okay.
Yeah.
Whose plane? Was it Mr. Wilson's plane?
Yes.
Or did he charter?
Oh, he rented it or chartered it, or it was his
So he
plane.
didn't have his own plane?
I think he had a shared plane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he fly from Detroit to Buffalo when he came in? Just on a side note?
Oh, yeah, always.
But charter, obviously. He's not flying Southwest or Delta or whatever.
Yeah,
okay.
he flew the charter plane to Buffalo a lot.
But picking up Drew Bledsoe and bringing him to Buffalo on a charter was unique.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They felt it merited, for what the team had paid and what he hopefully was going to give the team and fan base in return, that it would be a nice gesture. They would get to know him a little bit, talk about what the day was going to be like, which he didn't know. There was, if you recall, in the administrative building there, you go up the stairs or the elevator, there's like an atrium looking down. They wanted the whole staff in kind of a U shape.
Like the final scene of Titanic.
Ooh, that's right.
When they're all clapping and everybody's around the balcony. Yes.
Good call.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how it would look like. And so we were, and we were all very excited Drew Bledsoe was coming. Don't get me wrong, but that solicited some eye rolls. There were some people that were using their elbows to work their way to the front be hanging over. So I was happy to be hanging out in row 3.
What were you supposed to do when he walked in the building? Clap?
Yeah, applaud.
So this was like a pep rally.
Essentially an internal pep rally where
and this is not like a college recruiting visit. This guy is like a 10-year NFL veteran. That had to look kind of cheesy to him, right?
Not only that, I did have when he first came in, I saw him and it caught him off guard. He's like,
oh, did
it? Yeah,
well, yeah, because
he didn't expect it.
It's like a surprise party.
Well, yeah, you're walking in an office building, and all of a sudden it's like, what is that? And like he didn't know the building layout at all. It was all coming from upstairs.
Were you a little embarrassed?
Yeah, I didn't.
Was a lot of people in the building a tad bit like, oh god,
yeah,
a little cringe?
There were people that loved it. I mean, maybe I was showing my age or something, but I was like, yeah, okay.
And especially he came from the Bill Belichick Patriots.
Yeah,
like not rah-rah. I can't imagine that they would do that for anybody walking in the building there. Have a grand Titanic, send off.
And I don't think he thought it was Bristol, Connecticut with the Vince McMahon, the one commercial where he's there in the lobby and people come in. He's like, he grabs the mic when he sees him, like, and now,
yeah,
and they get the big welcome. Like, is this going to be every day or what?
So he comes in. That's a good anecdote. It just tells you kind of where the team was and the organization was, desperate for a quarterback.
Oh, for sure,
desperate.
Yeah,
and this is your guy. At least for what was the expectation? 3-4 good years.
Oh yeah, like playoff years, absolutely. Yeah, 3-4 playoff years. Yeah,
first year goes really well.
He was slinging it. He made the Pro Bowl. He had Molds, Peerless Price.
Yeah,
maybe Josh Reed was a rookie, and I think receivers had 1,000-yard seasons. I think Travis Henry was a really good running back.
The defense fell apart, though.
The defense was bad. Yeah, that's the whole thing about these drought years is like you get one unit
Here we
that's
go.
killing it, right?
For the 80th time, Don's going to talk about how the defense and the offense couldn't line up at the same time.
No, it was obvious. I mean,
know.
the good teams have both.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
the Bills just
or even just adequate on the other side of the ball.
right,
You
exactly. But it was exciting. Like, okay, this guy, and it was just from there. Obviously, the 2002 season is what we had Luke Russert on there, and he talked about just how crushing the final game was against the
2004.
Steelers.
That was 2004.
I'm sorry, 2004.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So 2002, he's great. The offense is high flying, but you don't make the playoffs,
Right.
Because the defense is not good. 2003 is kind of the start of
a little bit of a regression where you thought what was surprising was it appeared that Bledsoe was losing some of his ability to feel what was going on in the pocket.
okay,
He couldn't run.
right, and without that, he's just sitting
Yeah.
down.
I was like, wait a minute, dude. And those like rookies have that lack of awareness. Where is this starting to come from? And then in 04 drafted JP Lossman in the first round. Drew Bledsoe was not happy about that. I got a little taste of his this kind of angry side on that very first day going back in 02. In order for us to pay him, and I was in charge of the player pay, they had to sign just that W-4 form with New York State tax. So we had the whole thing filled out already, except for any withholdings that he wanted.
All right,
And all we needed was his signature and maybe the date, but just a signature. So they asked me to take it to him. I hadn't met him yet.
sure.
And I go down. I assumed he was in the locker room and like, hey, Drew, good to meet you. And my name is Don Purdy. Hey, if you want, I think I even made a joke because I'm the guy. If you want to get paid here,
Okay, yep.
all you got to do is sign this. We already filled out the rest of it. And it had been the end of maybe what he thought was a long day.
Sure.
Like it was 4 PM or
Okay.
something on his first day. Probably didn't even know where the bathrooms were, but I had a clipboard. It's like, just sign here and you'll get paid.
Right.
And he just lit into me.
Really?
Yeah. Like just barked something at me and he just kind of kept walking and like, hold on.
Yeah, you need to sign this.
Yeah, they didn't send. I mean, just if you don't know me or at least respect my position to know
Right.
that they sent me
Right.
to ensure that you're going to get paid.
Right. You're not asking him for an autograph or
No,
a favor.
right.
Like this. Yeah. Like you're
Yeah. And he grabbed it and threw something that was not legible at all.
you were the fall guy probably from something had happened before or just the overwhelming nature of
this wasn't child support. No, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying believe me.
no. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I know nothing about. Yeah, I think as far as I know, that would not have been part of any of his deal.
Almost
But-
a dump button for you
but-
there, Don. It's
well,
been a long time.
No, the other players we did have to put papers in front of them. They had to sign.
There are some famous examples of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they were not happy about it, but it was
Oh.
necessary. This is just for Drew to get paid.
Sure.
I don't know that he had. I
Wow.
believe he had any of those.
Did you
issues.
sometimes have to like put those in front of players?
There were times, but then we were happy to finally build an HR team, and actually
Oh.
Liz Malmstrom, who lives up by you,
What a
Liz
terrible job that is.
She did a great job,
There were some frequent flyers in that program, right?
Yeah, there was something that. So it was Barb Evans now does that. She's a VP, and I'm thrilled for her. But that's how far it became. But I had to do a little bit of that for a time. But
That's funny.
Yeah,
Like,
and
not
then-
funny, but it's like right. This should have been a layup. This is a no-brainer. Oh, hey, nice to meet you. Sign the piece of paper and on your way.
yeah, and then. Oh, geez. Do I say this or not?
Yeah, well, it's too late
I'll
now.
go. Yeah, there was a time that John Guy and I were in the same office, and Drew came up, and he knew us by now, and John and I were wearing the same colored shirt and the same style as dress shirt, I think, and he just made some comment that
But you guys like dressing alike?
Yeah, and a little more than that. Let's just say would not be very well received by the woke out there. That's all I'll say. Like,
all right, we'll move on.
I didn't care, but it was just like that was a weird thing to say.
He's known as a prickly kind of guy, right? Like he's always been known, not just your experiences with him, but I've always heard the reputation that he's kind of prickly. He had a little stint in media, I know.
I think, and I never like tried to get into his head and play Dr. Phil or anything, but I think he was really, really hurt about what happened in New England, and he was mad at them. And then when he left the Bills, he thought we let him go too early, and he was mad at us. And he made public comments about it.
That famous quote about throwing out all his kids' Bill stuff, and dressing him as a cowboy. And I mean,
and he was upset that we drafted somebody in the first round. Like, what does that tell you?
And at that point, he was like a 13-year veteran.
Yeah.
So drafting a quarterback in the first round was not an unreasonable decision to make.
No, and 04 was an odd year because you have Lossman as the first round pick, and we were like 3-6, so mathematically still alive. Had to win the rest of the games, and there were a lot of people saying, and I would have agreed, like, okay, when we do become mathematically eliminated, let's try the kid. But until then, let's go with a veteran.
And then you strung along a whole bunch of wins in a row
all the way to the end.
So, it ended up being the right call. To stick with him. You would have liked to know maybe JP could have pulled out that last game. Who knows? Let's move on to JP. Give me some memories, some thoughts, some observations of his couple years.
Yep. He was maybe you could argue Flutie here possibly, but he was probably, of all these quarterbacks, the best athlete.
Okay.
Like he's a guy, not that was ever considered, I don't think, but that could have played. He was fast. He had a really good arm, but came from Tulane.
Did he strike you as an NFL starting quarterback?
Physically, yeah.
Personality wise,
no.
Kind of like Rob, not Southern California.
There was a lot of comparisons.
Yeah, there were
of the two, and I don't know that if you would have sat down at lunch with him, which I may or may not have, I don't recall, but if you did, like you did with Todd Collins, like I don't. He might have been a candidate that also wouldn't have said a word.
Okay, so just to clarify, Drew Bledsoe is not in your top 3 to have a beer with going forward, like Alex Van Pelt. So we only have one. And JP, good dude, just doesn't have didn't have it, right? Just didn't have it. Whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's funny, we had Lee Evans on the program, and that was probably JP's best game. It was at 06, I think. That was the 283-yard touchdowns that he had, and they look pretty good. Like when we look back at those plays, he hung in the pocket and put the ball right where it needed to be twice. Ended up winning that game, hitting Peerless Price. But there weren't those games were few and far between.
I was struck looking back that his rookie year, he played 5 games and then got benched.
That was shocking to me.
Not his rookie year, his first year playing, his second year in the league. But boy, you draft this guy in the first round.
Yeah.
You have him sit for a year behind your veteran quarterback. You let your veteran quarterback go.
Yeah.
You almost make the playoffs. You start your rookie, and 5 games in, you cut his legs out from him, and you bench him for Kelly Holcomb.
That was shocking. And I think when you showed me this list, and I most of it, yeah. And then, wait a minute, I remember Holcomb playing that year, but then it had Lossman playing
the entire 2006 season.
Yeah, the 2006 season, right? But here, 8 games, and then Holcomb played 8. I would have been sure that the reason Holcomb came in was because of injury, because I did remember Lossman getting hurt, which would have been the next year. I'll talk about that in a second. But I was shocked to find out that it was for performance in the second year,
especially in your first year as a starter.
Right? Yeah,
you just completely undercut the guy.
Yeah,
he wasn't good, but man, you got to give him more than 5 games.
Yeah, that's right. It was 5, and then
Holcomb came in, and then he came back.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's setting him up to fail almost.
Well, I mean, and then he's got to kind of make the walk of shame around in the locker room. Other players, I don't think it sat well with, but I didn't remember it. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. So there was a theory going around at the time, the 2007 season, where JP started the season again, and they had drafted Trent Edwards. Okay, third round
pick, yeah.
Bill Walsh guy. I remember the whole thing about Marv's the GM then. They love Trent Edwards. JP's kind of on his last leash here. He starts the season and he gets benched. And doing our research here, we looked back and there was a Chris Mortensen article on ESPN.com back in 2007 stating that some of the players on the team felt like JP was benched because he was going to hit some performance clauses and that the owner pulled the shoot on him. That's still on ESPN.com from 2007 if anybody wants to go look at it.
Yeah, you showed me that article, and Chris Mortensen is one of the most respected journalists out there.
I'm sure a player told him that.
No doubt, and I don't doubt, and that's the thing, when you saw that article, Chris Mortensen was clear about saying, this came from a player that speculated, or I don't know what word to use, but that might have been the case. I don't doubt that a player might have said it, but it wouldn't have been the case, honestly. And there are times when players are right about things, about how things are managed and decisions and how they're made. In this case, Lossman was still on his rookie contract. The incentives are far from breaking the bank on a rookie contract. A second contract, I would believe it, but in a rookie contract, that's just a player I feel like had some kind of conspiracy theory that
do you ever?
I don't buy the team would have thought that in any way. They would have been thrilled for Lossman to achieve the incentives. This is a Greg Thompson topic, but they would have been thrilled for. It would have been better for Lossman to achieve those incentives for the future of him and for the team. The money would have been not anything that would have been significant enough to be a deterrent.
2 follow-up questions. Was there ever a time you remember where ownership or money or performance clauses affected the status of a player playing?
Here's the thing. And you'll appreciate this, is you're learning a lot of things that happened during the drought. And this is what makes the Bills' run right now impressive, consider if they're doing it the same way. But I was involved with a lot of contracts. I saw them all, actually. I had to put them in electronically. Some rookie contracts I negotiated. But most of the incentives were tied also to the team playoff appearance. Like a player could achieve,
1,200 yards
if you get
rushing,
5 interceptions or 10 sacks, you'll earn this. But it's not. But the team also has to make the playoffs. So there's a lot of teams that made a lot of players. There's a good players sometimes that earn those incentives, but they didn't earn the money because the team didn't make the playoffs.
Was that rare in the league? Did every team do the playoff tie-in, or was that
there was a lot of that? Yeah, there was a lot of copycat stuff going on because we could see all the other teams' contracts too after the fact. Yeah, we could see them all.
That's less common now, right? Are the team clauses less common now?
See, I mean, not having been there since 2017, I don't know if there's been a shift away from it or not.
Okay.
But if to whatever extent it's still in place, it makes the Bills being able to keep this nucleus together that much more impressive, because now they're paying out all of these.
Talk about it not likely to be earned. The Bills making the playoffs in 2006. Woo! That's a tough one. That's a tough.
But they were all in there. I mean,
a tough bar. Oof. Yeah. So we get JP, the end of JP controversy, whatever. It's his time has ended. Trent Edwards. Any observations, thoughts?
I just remember the first game he came in, he looked really good. I might have been against New England or somebody else, or had some wins, and we're like, what do you do now? Like, they get 3rd round pick. Like, who saw this coming at least this year?
2008, you had that hot start, right?
Yeah, and 5-2, yeah. And I remember he came to pick up his check after one of these wins, and I'm like, Trent, congratulations, you're playing great. He didn't want to hear any of it. He's like, no, thanks, but I haven't achieved anything yet. I haven't achieved anything.
Stanford guy.
Yeah.
Right. Like
polished, well coached, whatever. He did not want to, maybe it was for his own self-protection, but to start even listening to voices that were telling him that he was already playing well. Like, he really thought, no, this is just the beginning.
Sure.
Like he thought.
Feels like his career changed in that hit in Arizona.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Boy, you mentioned, going back to JP, I think I forget what year it was. What year was it where he played the opener? He took a shot in New England Vince Wilfork just did him dirty. You know, it was people were losing mind. 2000, opener. JP had thrown the ball. You can look it up, and you know, his legs were planted. The ball was clearly gone, and Vince Wilfork threw his 330 pounds just into his planted legs, and it was bad. He came back from it. It could have been a lot worse, but with Trent Edwards, good call. The hit he took in Arizona was to his head, and he was never the same quarterback again.
Yeah, can't blame him in some ways.
No,
you know, the Bills did have a tough injury luck. You know, and with these guys, everything would have needed to go right for one of these guys to really hit.
Sure.
But boy, it didn't go right.
No.
Whether it's, you know, talent, whether it's injury luck, whatever. Like they didn't catch lightning in a bottle with any of these guys.
Yep. There were flashes. They were like 3 or 4 game stretch where you're like, let's hope this is sustainable, and it just never was.
Sure. So we roll into 2009. The drought is now a thing. It's been almost a decade. I'm sure in the building, you know, pressure, you're feeling it. And in walks your boy, the Fitz, journeyman at that point, right? Had been with the Rams, had been with a bunch of teams, came from Harvard, no expectations, right?
I was in the room on the first night of free agency, and we were looking for a good, solid backup quarterback. We told his agent he was going to be the backup.
Okay. Because at the time, Trent Edwards was going to be the starter.
He was going to be the starter. He was scheduled to be the starter. We needed a guy that could help further mentor him, be a good guy in the team room, in the locker room, and Fitz was perfect. We didn't know he had played some in Cincinnati, and
he was probably content with that role as well.
He knew it coming in. He agreed. The contract that he had was.
Did they flat out say you're coming in to be the backup quarterback?
They did with him.
Okay,
they did with him. Yeah, and yes, there are times where, you know, what do you think with you know, Matt Barkley, these guys, you know what I mean?
But this is a little different. Trent Edwards is not as established. But it was made very clear that this is not an open competition.
Right. Trent Edwards will be our day one quarterback.
Okay. That is communicated to the agent.
Yep.
Take it or leave it.
Exactly. But, you know, Fitz was famously a smart guy and a Harvard guy, and we didn't know it. We had no idea who he was. He came in kind of a little shy, a little bashful, sort of just blended in.
Okay.
And then he got a chance to play. We had T.O. at the time.
Yep. And
I think maybe a turning point for him was he got to play. I think, if I recall, there was another Edwards injury, or might have been performance. I have to look that up. There was like each guy had their boat right. And he had a 99-yard touchdown pass to T.O. and that wasn't just lucky. He had a lot of other good plays. It was clear this guy had this bravado, had this confidence.
Did the guys love him?
He could run too.
Yeah.
They
must have immediately took to him, right?
Even T.O. someone said, who do you think you should be your starting quarterback? And he's like, you're watching the games too, isn't it obvious?
Yeah.
Like he was talking about Fitz. But one of the things he would do is in short yardage situations, or he would run the ball and he would dive head first.
Yes.
I was like,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He was easy to root for,
right?
Even as a person on the outside at the time, he was compelling. He was easy to root for. You know, he'd been in the league for a while, and he just seemed like a good dude.
He was.
The Alex Van Pelt comparison is probably fair. He clearly had a better playing career than Alex Van Pelt, but a guy who if you saw him on the street, you would never say, 15-year NFL quarterback, of course.
Right. Yeah, like his arm, you know, when he was going to throw a 30-yard out or whatever, he'd have to put like Flutie, but he was bigger than Flutie.
It looked like full effort.
Yes, full effort.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm hoping to get him on.
I was going to say he's a must have. I think a lot of Bills fans. My wife might be a guest host that day because that's her. Probably I think her favorite.
Yeah, good choice.
Drought era Bills player.
Good choice.
She loves the Fitz. We watched the Amazon pregame show on Thursday nights. Apparently for the football, but I think it's because she wants to just see what he's wearing and how he's looking these days. And she was a big fan of the Fitz.
He's so confident. He speaks so well. He was a great leader. Every year I would talk to Liz Maelstrom, and we would talk to the rookies about, this is what you do when you get hurt. And I remember I would use the team meeting room, and we would have a screen, and it was just the rookies, 20 of them, the 7 draft picks and the rookie free agents. And usually when we had the room, and everyone else would leave, and it would be slotted. Debbie Driscoll would have a schedule. Okay, you only have to 2:30. You know, 2:30, 2:29, you're gone.
Yep.
So I remember us starting a meeting at 2 with the rookies, and Fitz was on like a computer screen. He was looking at plays, and this was in like May, and it's like 2. What did I say? 2 o'clock. It's like 2:02.
Okay.
And he's still there. They're working on it.
Wow.
And
sat through the meeting,
just doing his own thing.
Yeah.
And I would say, I said something. I didn't think he was paying attention to me at all. And you know, we encouraged rookies to, hey, look, there are veterans on this team that are going to want to help you, obviously on the field, but off the field too. You know, go ahead and ask a veteran, you know, who manages their money, and you know, who does this. Do you know someone that does this?
Sure.
And I'm like Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he's hell no. I didn't think he was paying attention.
And this is the starting quarterback of the team at the
absolutely.
time.
Yeah, it's like, sorry,
that's great.
That's a great. Oh no, yeah.
That's so.
But he was kidding, and he did though. He really did help people like that.
Looking at this list, it's kind of struck me that there's only been in the time you were there was only maybe 4 times where there was a true established starter.
Yeah,
Jim Kelly, obviously, Drew Bledsoe for the time he was there. It probably never felt to you that J.P. Lossman, Trent Edwards was ever the bona fide franchise quarterback. Did it feel that way with Fitz for a couple of years? He was the guy?
Really not until 11. And I would say, and I think most fans would agree, that in 2010, he got to play for his performance. And we went into Baltimore, and they still had Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Suggs, and Fitz. We had a terrible record. But we were just, I don't think they knew much about him. I literally think we were like 0-10 or something. Going into Baltimore, we were probably 17-point underdogs.
Yeah.
And Fitz shredded that defense. Yeah. And I remember the press box was really low. Like most of them, you know, are way up to this was like only 20 rows off the field, and there were fans in front of us losing their minds.
Like who's this guy?
Who exactly? Yeah. Who is this guy?
Ironically, you know that game is one of the ones that people talk about because it cost them the chance to get either Cam Newton or Von Miller.
Oh gosh,
because you ended 3-13, and you picked third, and you ended up with Marcel Darius.
Yeah, it was so debatable.
Comparing, Cam Newton was 1, Von Miller was 2,
and
then Marcel Darius was 3. So in retrospect, the franchise might have been better off if Fitz hadn't gone into Baltimore and ripped him apart.
Now you'd have to look this up. I think Baltimore made a comeback, and we lost like 35-31 or something. But we were way up. I think they came back and won the game. I don't think we won that game, but there were games that Fitz won.
Yeah.
After that, like probably had no business winning that cost us in that way.
Didn't want to win those games either.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the end of Ryan in Buffalo.
He had, you know, a fantastic 2011 start to the season. Famously 3-0 after beating the Patriots, got the big contract. We ended up falling like a game short of the playoffs in 11. That was a tough one. 12 was a little bit just of a setback. Maybe defenses were starting to figure them out a little bit more.
Okay.
So it just seemed like this. I'm sure there was some financial considerations in there too, because he was due to earn base salaries that were at par with the Pro Bowl quarterbacks around the league.
And it was clear that his contract was not to where his play was.
Right. But then he went on to.
Did you agree with the decision to let him go?
I personally, I did.
Okay.
I mean, because I knew the contract, and for the team. He just I wish it worked out so much, but it didn't.
Did he understand? Like, was he?
I'm sure he did.
Okay,
but we went to the next year. He was in Houston, I believe, and I remember we went to Houston, and he came to the hotel to talk to like Eric Wood, talk to a bunch of the guys, and he was great. There was no bitterness at all. He was dressed like a cowboy.
I mean,
he's dressed like
everybody saw the picture of him during the Patriots playoff game a couple years ago in the red club seats, the outdoor club seats with no shirt on, flexing after the Bills scored. Like, he's number 2 on the list of guys you want to have a beer with from this list, correct? Like him and Alex Vanderbilt. He's probably number 1 for you.
I think it's 1 and 1A. Yeah,
1 and 1A. But
yeah.
what a like, just he's so Buffalo.
Yeah.
Even though he's not from here, it's probably not a surprise that he still is kind of connected with here, and he came back here, and he just personifies Buffalo.
He was on a podcast. It might have been with Eric Wood or someone else. Not us yet. We'll talk to him. But somebody pressed him about, for all the places that he played, what was the favorite place that he lived and played, and he messed around. He's like, I don't know, and finally, yeah, it was Buffalo. Like he just it was Buffalo.
It's too bad it didn't work out a little bit better, and they had a little bit more success because he was easy to root for. So we got we're gonna hit the fast forward button here. We got 10-15 minutes left on our show. Please like and subscribe to If the Walls Could Talk Buffalo. Appreciate that.
And this is like the 2-minute warning here.
Yeah, we're in 2013, and AJ. Oh no! Oh my God! Buddy Nix is the GM. He's going to be leaving. Doug Whaley's going to be taking over.
Right.
But Buddy Nix wants to leave the Bills one more gift, so he drafts EJ Manuel in the first round.
Everyone knew we needed a quarterback. Clearly, in retrospect, it was not a strong quarterback year like we've seen. But there weren't too many people that disagreed that Manuel was the best guy. I think though we had to trade up, right?
Yeah.
To get it. So.
It felt a little forced.
Yes, it did. It did feel forced. He came in perfect. He was from a military family. It was yes sir, no sir.
Florida State,
State, checked all the boxes. Athletic, not super athletic, but mobile enough.
Seems real likable in his post media career. He's great at it.
Yeah,
he's like it was weird. The one day he just popped up on ESPN. It's like, oh, it's EJ Manuel, and then I listened to him, and I'm like, oh, he's really good at this.
Yeah,
like he's like, and because of his time here and kind of how it played out, and he just wasn't great. It was just surprising to see just how good he is at the media thing.
Yeah, and you mentioned, some of these guys. There were flashes, or there were stretches of games where you thought, well, this guy might be the guy. But
he had the game, his first start in Buffalo, right? He led him down the field against Carolina.
It was week 2, first home game, and a game winner to Stevie Johnson. Yeah.
I could have made that throw. Like he was wide open,
like how? Yeah, like crazy. Like if you watched it on TV, I was there.
And God loves Stevie. Thank goodness he hung on to that one. Sorry. Hopefully Stevie comes on our show soon, and
you talked to him, right?
I did. Yeah. I talked to him up in Lockport a couple weeks ago.
Are we gonna?
Well, maybe not anymore. But at least he hung on to this one because that was the last play of the game. Like time had expired.
Yeah,
that was it. So famously, he hung on to that one. Unlike the one.
Oh, Stevie was
against.
Do you remember what Naaman Roosevelt said about him?
Yeah, it's the best.
The best you ever saw.
Yeah,
learn more from.
Owned Darrelle Revis. Can you give me one thought each on Thad Lewis and Jeff Toole? This is where it gets a little dark.
I have to admit, I don't remember the game that Jeff Toole started.
I think it was. Okay. Do you have any memory of him? That you can share.
He was tall. He was just kind of vanilla. I don't mean anything other than like I don't have memories of him other than he was the third string quarterback.
Well, there's always a
third string quarterback.
There's always a third guy, and sometimes during camp there's a fourth quarterback, like a camp arm who might be around the practice. So there's always like that third quarterback who people don't know, whatever. Jeff Toole seems like the prototypical third quarterback / camp arm.
Well, camp arm and a guy that was going to be on the 53 as the third guy, not active
and tall. Thad Lewis. Anything on Thad Lewis?
I hardly remember him being on the roster, and he got thrust into what was still considered a big regular season game against, I think, the Bengals.
Okay.
And I think he won the game.
Boy, you're in a bad spot when
he was a third string guy
shuffling through Thad Lewis and Jeff Toole.
Yeah.
And we skipped Brian Brom.
That was the last game of the 2009 season in Atlanta, and we were eliminated 3 games earlier, I think. And I don't think Fitzpatrick or Edwards were hurt. Edwards might have been hurt.
They just gave Brahma.
They just said we're gonna play you one game. It was almost like a favor to him as an audition.
Okay. No memories of him.
No, not really.
Okay.
I knew he had a great college career at Louisville.
Yeah. All right. So so EJ is 13th season. Then he famously starts the 14th season. Things don't go well, and they bring in Kyle Orton.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have a funny Kyle Orton story from his time
Let's hear it.
with the Bears.
All right.
My buddy Chris, who is a big wig with Toyota now, at the time he was the basically in charge of like field service engineers. So he'd go to different dealerships and he would any problems that mechanics had that they couldn't figure out, he was kind of Toyota's representative there.
Okay.
Long story short, Kyle Orton would bring his whatever the large SUV in for service, and he was famous for having the dirtiest vehicle that they had ever serviced.
Okay.
Apparently, it was like disgusting, like memorable. That 10 years later, when I saw this list, I'm like, oh, I got a Kyle Orton story from somebody in Chicago who said his vehicle was like the most atrociously dirty vehicle they had ever worked on at a Toyota dealership. Now, I'm sure they've seen a lot of stuff at a Toyota dealership,
like French fries and stuff for the kids. I would think.
I didn't ask.
Okay,
I did that. I can follow up. Yeah. I didn't ask.
Well, that's okay.
So does that surprise you about Kyle? Like, what do you remember about him?
Yeah, it surprises me because I knew, like, he statistically he was a guy that he had success in Denver. I forget why they parted. Well, Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
All right, that was good reason.
Yeah.
But he kept winning games, and he was like the one guy, the one quarterback that understood that we had a weapon on the field that the team invested a lot in Sammy Watkins. That he threw the ball to Sammy Watkins. Like, for some reason, Watkins was just enough. Like, Robert Woods was a good receiver. Goodwin was a deep threat. Chris Hogan came out of nowhere to be a good receiver, but Watkins was the guy. And
that was a good offense.
Yeah, and just for some reason, Orton was the guy that understood to just keep feeding Sammy Watkins, and that didn't sustain itself, but. It would be interesting to see the stats in terms of targets and everything, but it's like, come on, see what he can do when he's
right. He played 12 games in 2014 and then didn't get another year.
Yeah, and we got flirted with the playoffs again, and it was he statistically was at least average, maybe slightly north of average, and it's a guy we could win with, but it just didn't last.
And he had a dirty truck.
He had a dirty truck. I think he was on a 1-year contract also, I believe.
Okay. Okay, so then the last guy that we're going to talk about is Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah,
another fan favorite, kind of divisive in Bill's Twitter land for his performance, and obviously the quarterback who famously ended the drought.
Yeah,
but you could argue how much of it was on him and how much of it was the rest of the team's performance. Give me your recollections of Tyrod.
Well, when he came in, it was maybe a little bit for me like going all the way back to Flutie. Like, he's a signing that's he played in Baltimore, right? But he didn't.
Yeah, a little gimmicky.
Yeah, like, but what he didn't play in Baltimore. He couldn't crack the Joe Flacco, and maybe he's going to be that prototypical number 3 guy. But in the building, I kept hearing about. I would pop down to practice here and there if I needed to talk to a trainer or something, but I wasn't there all the time. But a lot of guys kept coming up to lunch and like, man, Tyrod Taylor, like, holy cow. And the buzz in the building started to be like, this was going to be a 3-way competition.
Okay.
Like, he was starting to take the lead.
So it was EJ Manuel and Matt Castle.
And Castle played well when...
And he kind of had some pedigree back up to Tom Brady and all those years in New England.
Brady went down with the ACL, and they still went 11-5 with Matt Castle.
Right,
like,
right.
The guy was
the older veteran at that point.
Legit. So it was interesting. And then Taylor, sure enough, was the starter. Well,
Matt Castle was the starter.
Asterisk on that.
Yeah, and I just love the fact that we realized that was the first play of the Rex Ryan era on offense, and you have your backup quarterback lined up in the Wildcat as the starting quarterback.
Yeah. That's such a bizarre.
That kind of encapsulates the 2 years of Rex Ryan quite well.
And I think in that game, if it was against the Colts, we had Percy Harvin also, and
was it Houston? They played Houston. Or
I want to say it was Indy
Fine.
at home, but won the game, and Tyrod Taylor could throw a real nice long
Deep ball,
ball.
yes.
Yeah, it was pretty.
But he was very inaccurate.
Yeah,
Short and medium.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a great he had a great deep ball.
Yeah, and he ran the ball well. It's just
Was he likable?
Yeah, he was a little bit careful. I don't think he even himself. I think he might have surprised himself even by being thrust into being the starting quarterback, which meant that, you know, after every game, it was mandatory that you did a press conference.
Uh-huh.
He just wasn't used to it, but he was real reserved. Like I remember, even in the building, I feel like he didn't totally trust. He wanted to.
The doctors?
No.
That was his next stop.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh, that was tough. But like he'd wear a hoodie. Maybe it was just his thing.
Okay.
I just remember him in the building. He was wearing a hoodie, and almost like he wouldn't look to talk to anyone. Not that it's weird. It's like that, when he did talk to you, he was very, very nice.
Was he just introvert?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was it.
Okay.
I think he was just a bit introverted, and but I gotta believe, like inside, he had to be so excited about what he'd accomplished, but. He wasn't about to just show it, you know.
All right, couple quick questions here before we wrap it up. Obviously, Don got let go before the 2017 season, which featured Tyrod Taylor and the debut of Nathan Peterman, and we all know what happened there. 2018, we had a game or two from Derek Anderson and one from Matt Barkley, and then obviously the dawning of the Josh Allen era. Give me your third guy on your list of who you want to have a beer with. We have Alex Van Pelt. We have the Fitz. Who would be your third? Who would be your fourth in a round of golf? Those two and who?
A third?
Well, yeah. You're the fourth player. Who's the third?
Okay,
come on, Don. Follow along. Who's the third?
I am going to go with. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is obvious and not the insider's view, but Jim Kelly.
Jim Kelly. If you had to win one game and you couldn't pick Jim Kelly. You had to win one game. Who's your guy?
Is Allen eligible for this?
No.
Okay.
When you were there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Wade, but it would have been Doug Flutie.
Really? Over Frank?
That's how Frank rolled. He was just so.
One game.
I actually forgot about him.
One game to save your life. Who's your starting quarterback? Doug Flutie or Frank Reich?
Frank Reich. Just because he proved it.
Yeah, I think I might go with Doug.
Yeah,
yeah.
Doug would have been able to take more of it upon himself, use his legs,
sure,
when he needed to. I loved watching that with Flutie. I think Frank would have just been so prepared.
Yeah,
so prepared,
especially if your life was on the line.
Yeah, and he showed it in '90, and then yeah.
Any other last thoughts? Any other memories of any of these guys?
I think I mentioned this before. You know, EJ Manuel. It's great to hear what he's doing in the media. Sometimes you could be too polite. I remember we were in London. I think I've shared the story before, but real quick, we were staff was going to be on the last bus. Players went over on earlier buses, and so the first bus went over. There was a second bus. The second bus was like in the parking lot, getting ready to leave. Like 5 minutes to go, and EJ was up. We were going to leave after the game to fly home, and he was up at the counter, like just paying for his incidentals and room service, or whatever. And there were like two staff members in front of him. First of all, I'm thinking staff members, hey, your starting quarterback is behind you, and the bus is right there.
Right,
now 4 minutes, 3 minutes,
right.
And finally, and I saw EJ looking at the bus, and finally went up to him. One of the things I did, I approved all the football expenses. I was part of it, approving that bill, and I'm like, EJ, just go.
Yeah.
We'll take care of it back when we get home.
Sure.
I'll whatever shows up, I'm going to deduct from your paycheck.
Right.
You don't have to properly check out here.
Right.
Okay. I don't know what he would have done if I didn't do that. I'm not saying
he would have stood in line.
He would have just been on the late bus. I think. Yeah.
Any idea what that?
He would have gotten in trouble.
Do you remember what the incidentals were for? Yeah, he could have got fined like $10,000 or whatever for being late for something, right?
It was like dry cleaning because we were there a week.
Okay. Oh, all right.
So
yeah, so you'd rack up some.
Yeah, you just leave your clothes out there.
Sure.
And they would pick them up, and it was just they
Maybe he
wash
didn't
your
want you to
clothes.
see that there were some movies on there or something. You never know.
That would not be him.
That would not be.
That would not be EJ. No, it was dry clean. There were a lot of extraordinary expenses that week.
I won't ask you who'd be the most likely to have a sketchy hotel bill on that list.
Okay, then don't.
We'll leave it there. Hopefully, everybody enjoyed this. I
All
think if this is well received and people hit the like and subscribe button, and please leave me a comment if you like what we're doing here. We could certainly do this with running backs.
Well, put that out there. What would be the next position? Is it receiver, running back? Is it
receiver, running back are the two natural ones? But,
seems that way.
DNs, there's a whole bunch of those.
Sure.
Doing Bruce Smith to Von Miller, something like that. So hopefully everybody enjoyed it, and we'll see everybody soon.
All right. Thanks, Josh.